Well, hello everybody, and welcome to another Monday question and answer with myself. I'm Jasper Blake, the head coach here at the My Endurance Hub space. Um, like every week, there's no such thing as a silly question. Gosh, we've covered just about everything, and it's awesome. Always grateful when people jump in and aren't afraid to ask anything. We've covered everything from how to train to if I should wear spandex to what do I eat. And it's a never ending list. So don't be shy. Um, we'll give it about 30, 60 seconds here just to let any more people come in that might be a bit behind here. Um, like always, these question and answer sessions are recorded, and you can find them in the back end of the My Endurance Hub space in the recorded question and answers. So, if you want to review some of the stuff we talked about, or maybe you have a friend that it might be interested in the subject matter that we covered, please send them over and they can check it out there. And again, a reminder to really take advantage of all the amazing content that we have in the My Endurance Hub space, in the Circle app, which you'll be in right now if you're listening to this. But there's just so much great stuff to help you on your endurance journey. We have webinars, we have master classes with leading experts, we have training programs in there for you. And daily endurance moments, these little 2-3 minute little pieces of information that are going to help you week to week. So definitely check it out. And yeah, let's see here. So to ask a question, the best way is if you look at the bottom right of your screen here, just under the video. You'll see a little chat box. That's the best place to ask a question, and I take them in order that they come. So far, we've never run out of time. We've managed to get to everybody. But in the event that we don't, for some reason, it's great if you could post the question in the discussion with your coach section or ask your coach section, and I can address that. I'll send you an answer based on that. So. One more little bit here. I don't know if you saw the video from last week, but we have now surpassed 1,000 members, and actually this morning we broke through the 1,100 member barrier. So this community is growing and growing and growing. I mean, 10 to 15 new people every day. And on a personal note, I find it just so encouraging that there's clearly a demand for what we're putting out there, and that's just really excellent. So welcome to all our new members, and welcome back to all our returning members. It's really great to see this community growing. So thank you for that. It looks like we have some questions already in the chat there. James, we've got James here. Hi, James. Nice to see you. Devin, he's back as well. So let's get cracking here. James asks, what strategies and techniques can triathletes adopt to optimize their transition times between swim bike and bike run in Ironman events, ensuring a smoother shift without expending unnecessary energy? This is a great question, and it looks like James has made it specific to Ironman events, which is relevant because transitions for Ironman versus sprint triathlons, they're the same, but they're also a little bit different. The first thing that you can consider with an Ironman is that the entire event is very, very long. And so nothing needs to happen in a real hurry. Now, that's not to discourage you from having a nice, clean, crisp, and efficient transition in an Ironman. It just means that you can take a deep breath and slow down a little bit and really get it right. Because the 2 or 3 seconds that you might gain by rushing through it, you may lose if you're not diligent with making sure you put on, comfortable clothing for the next event, or maybe making sure your nutrition's good. So you can kind of just take a little deep breath there on the Ironman transitions. But let's sort of address your question specifically. So you want to, what techniques that will optimize your transition time? So first is know how an Ironman transition works. They're a little different often than a normal triathlon. So in a normal triathlon, you'll have your transition area set up where your bike is. So most races have the same transition from swim to bike as they do bike to run. So you'll rack your bike in the bike rack, and then underneath your bike or around your bike, you'll have, your helmet and your glasses and your running shoes and everything that you'll need for both transitions. In an Ironman, for the most part, and maybe this is exclusive now, I don't know 100% for sure if this is how they do it for all of them, but you will actually have transition bags. And there will be, so you won't keep all of your stuff by your bike like you would at a smaller grassroots event. And this is to help organize the transition area a little bit better, because Ironman events often will have 2,000, 3,000 people. That's an awful lot of people if all of their stuff is kind of scattered in and around the bikes. So they like to keep that area nice and clean. So you will have a bag that is designated as your swim to bike transition bag. And in there, you can put everything you'll need to transition from swim to bike. Likewise, you'll have another bag, often, always, they're different colors to help designate, which is which. But you'll have a bike to run transition bag, and in there you'll put all the gear that you want to transition into for the run. So the other thing to remember is, in Ironman, you're going to come out of the swim. The first place that you're going to go is through this area where you actually collect your bag, and they'll be in numbered order. Now, if you're at the front of the race, if you're one of the pros, often they'll have people there that are getting your bag for you, or they'll be a little more spread out so that it's easier for you to find. I don't think that's the case if you're part of, the larger age group contingent. But, the racks are typically numbered. So let's say you're number 1,120, your rack will be, you'll have to kind of find it, but it hopefully be in sequential order. So you're not just looking for a random bag. But when you check in the day before, you're going to hang that bag up in the right place. So you'll have a visual. I always encourage people to do a transition walkthrough. So you should practice going from swim to bike and going down the little area where they're going to have your transition bag, so that more or less where it is. There's going to be a whole bunch of bags hanging there that, it's a little tricky, but you'll know your number and you will have walked through it the day before. And so hopefully it doesn't take you too long to get it. So let's say you're now going from swim to bike, you grab that transition bag, and then they're going to file you through a change tent. So there's actually going to be, a men's and women's change tent that you're going to go through. And this is your opportunity to do your transition to change into whatever you need. Now, if you're using a wetsuit, you got to take that wetsuit off. The age group contingent, I think, has to get their bike shoes on in that transition area. Some of the pros will often have their shoes on their bikes. So little things like that are a little different between the pros and the age groups. Let's say you're an age grouper, you have your bag full of bike gear. There's going to be a whole change tent where you sit down in a chair, you can dump that bag out, and in that bag there should be helmet, glasses, bike shoes, anything else that you want to put on for the bike. And that includes the possibility of actually changing into bike gear. Now, I recommend getting a good triathlon suit so you don't have to do that, because that saves time. It's hard to kind of get in and out of spandex when you're wet. So ideally you have a one-piece triathlon suit or a two-piece triathlon suit that is also good for you to use on the bike. But let's say you don't really care what your time is. You're just trying to finish this thing. You might want to change into bike gear. I really encourage people to feel as comfortable as they possibly can in an Ironman. That bike ride's 5-6 hours. So if you were going out for a 5 or 6, 7 hour bike ride, let's say by yourself at home, you wouldn't wear uncomfortable gear. You would wear proper cycling kit so that you're as comfortable as possible, right? So, getting back to how to optimize your transition, just being organized with that bag in an Ironman, knowing that when you dump it out, you're going to have everything you need right there, and having practiced it before is a really good strategy. So wetsuit comes off, I dump my bag out. Now I'm going to get, what order am I going to get things in? Put things on, like if I'm not getting changed, maybe the shoes go on, helmet goes on. One little strategy is I never used to put my glasses on when I was kind of sweaty and wet, because they would kind of fog up. So I would often actually tape my glasses to my bike and get them on when I'm actually riding. But let's say you want to put them in the transition bag. Well, maybe you're just carrying them so they don't get foggy and steamy, little things like that. Maybe what I'm trying to say is it's best to really practice that transition, or both transitions, a little bit before you get into the event. Now, let's say you're coming from bike to run. After transition, yeah, one of the other things you gotta have to remember is if you do have a wetsuit, you usually have to stuff it into that bag. You can't just leave everything sprawled around. So you got to stuff this, stuff you took off from the swim back into the bag. And then often there's a volunteer who will take it from there and it's numbered. So then you won't lose your stuff. Bike to run's the same thing. You're going to come in off the bike, making sure you get off before that mount line. We've talked about that. And then you're going to run your bike to your rack. And then again, they're going to feed you through an area where you're going to get your bike to run transition bag. And in there, we'll have all the things that you need for the run. So you're going to be running along, you grab your bag, you go through the change tent. And again, there's change tents because some people like to, get completely undressed and into running gear. I was like that for Ironman. I used to, probably 80% of the time I would change into running gear for the run. It would take an extra 20, 30 seconds max. But I felt very comfortable and I really loved running in run gear. And I also found it a nice mental shift for me. I'd be like, now I'm just going for a long run. And, if I was in light, flowy fabrics that I would use for any other normal run, it felt really, really good. Saying that, I do encourage people to have a comfortable triathlon suit that they don't have to change out of because it just takes one of the steps of the process out of it, which is nice sometimes. So simplifying it is really, really important as well. So again, you're going to go into the change room, the change tent. There's going to be a whole bunch of chairs. And you're going to dump that bag out. And in there should be your running shoes, socks, probably highly recommended, especially for a marathon so you don't blister as easily. You're going to change the clothes. I don't know. That's up to you. If you have a tri suit that you're really comfortable with, then I wouldn't change clothes. Helmet's going to come off, glasses going to come off. Maybe you've got a fresh set of glasses for the run because maybe they're all kind of caked in stuff from the ride, or you're, remembering to take those glasses if you want them. I used to like wearing a visor on the run because it allowed heat to escape from my head, but it also kind of protected my face from the sun, which I found nice. So whatever you need in that transition bag, and again, practicing that bike to run transition, we often do that more in training than we do swim to bike, because the feeling of running off the bike is something that people really need to get used to. So, you're going to put on all, take off whatever bike gear needs to come off, put on the running gear. And then again, you're going to have to shove all of the bike gear into that transition bag. You can't just leave it sprawled around, or they either give you a penalty or they make you go back and fix it. And then that bag will, go back to its rack and you can collect it later. So I don't know if I answered your question, James. Like so many of my answers, they go on and on. I just kind of like to dive in and, I never know which direction they're going to go. But I would say, in real short, how do you make your transition smoother? You just practice them. Don't make your first transition the one that you do at a race. Set up little transitions every week, especially from bike to run, and practice getting off your bike and changing into whatever you're going to change into, and getting into your shoes. Little tips and tricks, like one little thing is to have elastic laces on those running shoes, to have Velcro straps on your triathlon shoes, as opposed to laces or kind of hard to manage buckles on those bike shoes. So there's some triathlon specific gear that you can get that's really going to make that move a little quicker and more efficient as well. Yeah, that makes sense. How to not expend unnecessary energy? Well, you can slow down through the transition. You don't have to sprint, especially in an Ironman. You can kind of walk, run it. You take your time. There's usually an aid station in there too. So if you need to top up with a bit of fuel, you can take the time to do that. I'll share one story with you. I found this a really wonderful, funny story. The year I won Ironman Canada, Ironman people are finishing. I finished in 8.5 hours that year, but people are, finishing in 17 hours. And I had finished the race, and, I kind of done all the post-race media stuff. And, all that had kind of died down, and I was, going back to kind of collect my things. And, it was at least an hour or two after I'd finished, and there was a massage tent. So I thought I'm going to go get a little quick massage, maybe help the recovery process a little bit. And there was a guy in there as well. And I was on the table beside him. I said, "Hey, great job. Like, how was your day?" He's like, "How was my day?" He's like, "I'm in transition from bike to run." He's like, "Are you finished?" I said, yeah, I just finished about an hour ago. And he's like, oh my God, he was so mad. Um, anyway, he was getting a massage from Bike to Run. So on the extreme end of the transition scale, I suppose in Ironman, maybe there's an opportunity to get a massage. I don't know if that's still the case, but this was great. I loved it. The guy was just taking 10, 15 minutes to get a massage before he started the run. That's a great way to do an Ironman as far as I'm concerned. Okay, I'll leave it there. Thanks, James. Thanks for the question. Devin says, for endurance runners, how does proper nutrition and hydration before, during, and after runs impact performance and recovery? And what are some specific recommendations for race day nutrition? So great question. It really depends on the length of the run. And I think it depends on the individual too. So I'm about to say something that might get me in trouble in terms of pre-race fueling or pre-long run fueling. I personally function way better if I have nothing. If I have some water and coffee, I run really, really well. So I'll get up in the morning, I'll have a glass of water, and then I'll have, a small coffee, and then I can go bang out, 1 to 2 hours of running, and I feel like incredible. If I eat before running, I feel horrible. And that's just me. I have friends, they were very, very high level athletes. They were fine eating before. So it's a bit individual. I don't necessarily recommend doing it the way I do it because you're fasted and, your body needs good, nutrition. So the pre stuff should be carbohydrate focused, maybe with a little bit of protein, a little bit of fat to kind of help satiate your hunger. And it should be probably, if you're doing a hard workout, a couple hours before is the last opportunity really to eat anything significant. But then leading into that run, maybe you have, a bar or a gel or something that's a little easier to digest. Again, that's carbohydrate focused. And then it makes sure your muscle glycogen stores are really topped up before you start that workout. And that's the advisable way to go about it. For some reason, my system just felt funny if I ate before running. I could never figure out why. However, if I ate before swimming or biking, I generally had no issue. It just seemed to be running, and I can't figure it out. But I would recommend, like a bagel with a little bit of peanut butter or nut butter, a little bit of honey or a banana on top of that. And that's usually a really, really good way to go. It's carbohydrate focused, a little bit of fat, a little bit of protein, nothing fancy. Practice it so that what it does to your system. And that's the best pre. During's a little different, up to about an hour, hour and a half. We typically don't need anything. We have enough stored muscle glycogen to last us 60, 90 minutes, maybe even up to 2 hours if we're running quite slowly on an endurance run. But certainly when we get above 60 to 90 minutes, we have to really start being mindful of the loss of carbohydrate and the loss of water and the loss of sodium. Keep it super simple. We need water, we need sodium, and we need carbohydrate as things get longer and longer. So on my long run days preparing for Ironman, say 2.5 hours of running, and this is at pace. So I'm not going that easy kind of endurance pace. I'm a little higher than that. So my carbohydrate demand is quite a bit higher. I was very diligent. I would try and time it out in the same intervals that I would get it in a race, which was typically about a mile. So for me, that was anywhere from 6 to 7 minutes. And so I would, for my long paced, very deliberate Ironman training runs, every 6 or 7 minutes, I'm taking a little drink of something, a sport drink with some carbohydrate, water, sodium. And every about 15 minutes, so let's say every second aid station, I'm having a little bit of a gel and I'm chasing that with the sport drink as well. So my blood sugar stays very level. My hydration levels stay very level. My sodium levels stay very level. Just like clockwork and training my gut as well. So it's very, very important to be very deliberate about what I did. Now, if I was in the winter, I'm going for a 90-minute, endurance run. It's the off season. I'm cruising through the forest with my friends. I'm gonna be honest with you, I never really took anything. If the run started to exceed 2 hours, then yes, I would take, a little water bottle and maybe a gel. But, generally I could get away with very little. If they were very high intensity workouts, like a track workout, I might have a bit of sport drink throughout just to kind of satiate my thirst and, have a little sip between intervals. But when the intensity is really high, it's hard to consume anything anyway. So it really depends. It really depends on what kind of run you're doing. So I don't know if that helps. So after, let's see, during and after runs impact performance and recovery, and what are some specific recommendations? So another thing I'll say is when you start getting into the really long miles, like the Ironman pace runs, 2.5, maybe even up to 3 hours. Yeah, if you under consume, if you under fuel during those, you can put yourself into too much of a deficit. So the actual pre-run strategy, or the during run strategy, is really important for your recovery coming out of it as well, because you don't want to dig too big of a hole, or you won't be able to move from workout to workout very well. You'll just put yourself in a hole. Afterwards, yeah, we want to focus on replacing carbohydrate, replacing water, maybe a little bit of sodium, and then getting stuck into like a really well balanced meal with some really great protein. Um, so, that's important. The other thing to remember is if you under fuel during a long run or ride or any kind of sport, and you start to bonk, so you really run out of muscle glycogen, often in the back end of that, after we'll over consume. Like if we need 1,000 calories to replace it, we'll eat 2,000 because our body's just like starving and ravenous. So that's not helpful either, right? Like we want to stay pretty level and balanced throughout. And then race day nutrition is the same thing. If it's a short sprint event that's going to take you an hour, you may not need anything, maybe just a little sip of something on the bike. Certainly for those shorter races, you don't really need to carry like a liter of water. It's very heavy. But as it gets longer and longer, yeah, you've got to be really mindful of that nutrition. It's got to be going in on regular intervals, small amounts frequently, with the focus being carbohydrate, water, and sodium. And often we can get that through a sport drink, and then a little bit of other stuff as well. So lots of amazing products on the market now. And so what I would encourage you to do is try a few. If some may not agree with your gut, you might not like the flavor, that might not be palatable for you, but eventually you'll find something. There's lots of great products out there. So I encourage you to experiment a little bit, and once you find one that works, really stick to it and then train yourself on it. Devin, I hope that answers your question. James says, how should runners structure their weekly mileage and intensity to safely progress and avoid overuse injuries, especially when training for longer distances like marathons? Yeah, James, this is a really great question, because I think this is the mistake most people make when they get into a training program. Certainly, if it's just running, but also if you're into triathlon, the running part of of all the sports, this is the one that's going to get us into the most trouble, because the impact load is so high. Running is the highest risk sport for injury, in my opinion. And it's not just my opinion. That's like, the other two are non-impact. They're pretty gentle on the body for the most part. The only problem you run into with swimming, biking is repetition. So you're repeating the same movements over and over, which can get you into a bit of trouble. But running has that, combined with the impact load, which is hard on the body. So a couple little rules to throw at you, if I'm thinking off the top of my head here. One is to vary your training. So it's good to vary in the weeks. You should have like maybe an easy recovery run. There can be a long distance run that's maybe on varied terrain like trails, so it's not always just hard pavement. Some higher intensity running is fine. So the variation in pace can often help kind of stave off injuries a little bit. Although, there's an expression, and that's that speed kills. So we have to be a little bit careful with, too much high intensity. If anything's going to get you into real trouble running, it's probably high intensity and or high volume. So if you haven't been doing much running and you suddenly go out and run for 3 hours, yeah, you're probably, you're putting yourself at higher risk. On that note, being very progressive with your running. And by that, I mean, the progression. So week to week, a nice little rule of thumb is not to increase your run mileage by more than about 5 or 10% per week. So if you're doing it on mileage, let's say you run 10 miles one week, then your total mileage for the next week shouldn't really be more than 11 miles. And that's hard for people to wrap their head around, because it seems like such a basic and easy progression. And often as a coach, when I'm programming, sometimes I'll get some pushback if it doesn't look like the program's progressing fast enough. And my pushback on that is always that, well, with running mileage, you have to be so careful. And so, 5 to 10% increase per week is really advisable. Uh, your sporting background is relevant. So let's say you're brand new, you're coming off the couch, you've never actually really done any running. Well, you should probably start with a walk run program. So don't just jump into 20 or 30 minutes of straight running, like do a walk run program, 10 times 30 seconds of running, 1 minute of walking, that kind of thing. Really just to manage that impact load. Again, this is something I get pushback on, but I very, sternly push back in the other direction because the impact load is so high for running. So just making sure you manage, the load is really, really important. And then to specifically address the part about the marathon, just give yourself a nice healthy timeline. So, if you're a very fit runner to start, maybe, you've done 5Ks, 10Ks, you run 4 or 5 times a week, you're generally injury free, and you've been doing it for a couple of years. Well, yeah, you could probably pick a marathon and in 12 to 16 weeks be ready for it, just with some specific training. If you're off the couch and you haven't done much running, 12 to 16 weeks is way too little. Give yourself a year where you can go through a few different training cycles. You start off real gentle, maybe even more than a year, maybe you take 2 or 3 years to get to that goal. And then the first year, the goal is a 5 or a 10K at the end of a couple training cycles. And then the next year, maybe it's a half marathon. In order to just manage the load, you have to just be really smart about the progression. So I hope that answers your question, James. Thanks for that. It's a good one. James says, awesome, 1,100 members. Yeah, how cool is that? Oh my gosh, my voice just broke. I'm almost 50. How did that happen? Yeah, it's so exciting. I mean, it really is. And I've got a lot of great conversations going on in the background with a lot of our members, and I know a lot of the members are trying out the training programs and experiencing great success and liking what we have in there. And it really is encouraging. And as I said, it seems to be a trend now that we're 10 or 15 new members a day. And so I'd expect very quickly we'll be at 2003 and onward. And as a coach and somebody who loves passing on their knowledge and experiences, I'm just like thrilled that so many people are interested. So thanks for the comment there, James. And then James says, haha, I'm not sure what James is laughing about. Doesn't matter. I'm glad you had a laugh. Devin says, hey, I saw your post on triathlon hacks and they talked about beard grooming for aerodynamics. What are your thoughts on beards in triathlons or shaving before or after the race? I saw that too. Oh my gosh, that was a funny post. There was some other real gold nuggets in there too. But look, I've always been of the mindset that if you're going to do a really long endurance race, less body hair is better. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine doing an Ironman with a beard purely because it would just be hotter. Even when I shave this, I got a little bit of 1 week kind of stubble going here. When I shave that and then I go outside, I can immediately feel that it's cooler than it was before. Likewise, if I shave my head, I got a little bit of hair now, but before races, I used to shave it, and that was, especially for hotter climates, I would do that because at least it felt like I was, dissipating more heat. So, this is talking about aerodynamics, but, heat dissipation is often one of the things that is really crucial in a hotter race. Our core temperature goes up, and then along with it goes perceived effort and effort in general. It's like hot. It's hard to really go when your body is hot. So shaving really helps that. In terms of aerodynamics, yeah, for sure. I suppose, especially in the water, that's hydrodynamics. The hydrodynamics are important. So shaving has long been a thing in, with competitive swimmers, and they'll shave, their entire body. And part of that is so they move through the water a little bit quicker. And also part of it's feel, like when you shave hair off of your body and then get in the water, there's like a heightened sense, heightened sensory thing that goes on there. So, But yeah, sure. I mean, if they got in a wind tunnel and shaved the beard and it was faster, gosh, as a competitive triathlete, I sure would have done the same thing. I would have looked for every bit of speed I could have, including shaving a beard. I don't know if I can grow a beard though. I've been trying. This is like 6 weeks. um, Great question. I love it. So yes, shaving before a race, after a race, whatever, but before a race, that was the norm. At least when I was back in the day, we would shave our legs. For Hawaii Ironman, I would shave my arms. I would shave my chest because it was a non-wetsuit swim. We'd shave everything. Yeah, it at least felt like you were moving quicker and could feel the water a bit more. So great question, Devin. Thank you. James says, how can incorporating cross training and strength workouts benefit runners? And what specific exercises or routines would you recommend to complement a runner's training and enhance overall performance? James, I love this question because for runners in particular, I think cross training is really crucial. And it goes back to the point I made before, which is that one of the limiters for running, or one of the risks in running, if you run too much, is the impact load and your tolerance for impact. The more impact you put into your body, the higher the risk of injury. And so, using other sports to gain fitness is a really great thing to do. Biking, I have a lot of friends, or not a lot. I have a few friends that went to Olympic Games for marathon running. And I know for a fact that they would incorporate some cycling into their training because they could go for 2, 3, 4 hours on a bike. Heart and lungs don't really know the difference. Yes, there's muscle specificity. You're not getting running specific, work, but the heart and lungs still get worked. And it's, you go for a 3-hour run, that's really hard on the body. You go for a 3-hour bike ride, it's pretty gentle on the body, but you're gaining some of that, endurance work, which is so valuable for endurance sports. So, that would be one thing. Cross country skiing in the winter would be a brilliant thing to do. It's very low impact. It's a different stimulus, but again, heart and lungs don't really know the difference. Tremendous crossover, particularly with classic cross country skiing, where the movements are very similar to running. Skate skiing, the musculature involved is very similar to cycling. Likewise, skating or speed skating, very similar to cycling. That's why you see a lot of athletes who cross over from Winter Olympics into Summer Olympics cycling. I mean, not a lot of athletes. A few have done it with success, and that's because muscularly it's very similar. Also for runners, though, just having regular work on core and hip stability is really valuable. So you don't need an out and out strength program, although if you have the time, I recommend it. But you can do some really good work with, just core and hip stability, on a weekly basis to make sure that your foundation is really good, so that at the end of those long runs, you're not breaking down. You kind of have a strong platform to go on. So, there's a few examples there, James, of some cross training that you can do that will benefit your running. We have a question from Ayrton. Ayrton, nice to see you on here. This is fantastic. Ayrton and I have had a great conversation in the back end, and Ayrton's got a really cool podcast. I'd encourage people to check it out. Ayrton, maybe you could throw the name of your podcast in the chat here. Let's see what Ayrton has to say. He says, I'm probably one of the newest members. I just got in contact with you a day ago, and I am training for my first 70.3 in Victoria in 2024. I am 58 years old, and you're excited about it. Hey, Ayrton, that's awesome. I love it. I love that you have a really clear goal here. We're going to be there. I think in my message, I'm not sure if you realized that we were in Victoria, but we'll be here. So I'm so excited to meet you. And gosh, at 58 years old, you're getting ready for your first 70.3. That's a real inspiration. Awesome. And it's so great to have you on board here. Again, please pop the name of your podcast into our little chat thing here. I'll give you a little shout out for sure. And then Ayrton also follows up and says, I know I have 7 months to go. However, I do not want to overtrain. My question is, when will be my month with peak load before the race, and when to start tapering? Ayrton, this is such a good question. So you have a really healthy timeline here, which is nice. 7 months is great. And, given it sounds like you have a history in sport, and so, you're active and probably quite fit in the moment. What I would do is look at it like this. I would break it into two different training cycles. I would break it into two 3.5 month training cycles. Um, with that second 3.5 month training cycle, so let's see here. The race is, I think, end of May. Let's say it's June 1st. It's like beginning of June. And so what have we got? May, June, April, May, June, no, March, April, May. So kind of mid-February/March is when you can really start being specific for that half Ironman training. Now, between now and then, my recommendation would just be to keep developing and keep getting more proficient with swim, bike, and run. What you don't need to do right now is start training specifically for the half Ironman and do that for 7 months, because I think that's going to be a little bit hard on the body. What I would do now is just have a little bit of a lighter training load, maybe a little bit more organic as we move through the winter here. So some trail running, don't get too hardcore about pounding the pavement and being like, really in your aero bars out there in the pouring rain on the West Coast here. You don't really need to do that for the next few months. You can be a little more casual. Maybe you're spending 1 or 2 times a week indoors on the trainer to kind of get used to that position you're going to be in. My point is that training for the next 3.5 months can be a little less specific to the half, but definitely specific to triathlon. So a regular routine of swim, bike, run would be awesome. We have great training programs available for you in the My Endurance Hub space, so you should check them out. And based on your level, a really good one to do would be either the beginner, intermediate, or advanced triathlon program. They're all 16 weeks, which is actually really nice. It gives you the next 4 months to do that. Or you could do a combo. I'm not sure what level you're at, so maybe, chat with me in the back end after. And then, a 3 month, 3.5 month, specific program for the 70.3, starting kind of mid-February or March would be awesome, so that, once or twice a week, you're getting on your bike for 60, 70, 80, 90K of biking in the position you're going to be in, practicing your nutrition, run off the bike for sure. And so that by the time you get to the race, you're like, oh, I'm really confident. I know what I'm doing here. I've practiced this for the last 10, 11, 12 weeks before going in. So, that's kind of how I would do it. A little less specific now, and then very specific for the last 3.5 months leading in. Ayrton, I hope that was useful for you. Please reach out to me in the back end there if you have further questions. I can give you a little guidance for sure. Yeah, James says, wow, inspiring, Ayrton. Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I love it when people take on new things. I don't want to say in the later years, Ayrton, 58 is still really young, but it still takes some courage to kind of, dive into something new. My courageous thing was hockey, but it's not that courageous. I was 38 when I started. I retired from pro racing at 38, went straight to the hockey store, bought all my gear, and I haven't looked back. And what I love about it is that I'm really always in the fun part of the learning curve with hockey. I've been doing it for 10 years, but I still feel like every time I go out there, I'm learning something new. And my hope for you is that you feel the same way about triathlon. There's just so much cool stuff to learn, especially with 3 different sports. So it sounds like you're enjoying the journey, which is great. Looks like we don't have any more questions. This has been a really great session. If you do have one, I'll give it another 30 seconds here. You can pop it in there. Otherwise, remember that these are recorded. So please, if you want to follow up and review something, dive in there. If you have any friends that might have found this talk useful, please send them over. And of course, again, a reminder to check out all the amazing stuff we have in the Circle platform there. And there's just so much great content and things to read and videos to watch that are really going to help you. Ayrton says, sure, thank you so much. I will plan to do my first full Ironman when I turn 60. Ayrton, you're a legend. I love it. And that's a really nice timeline. That's a great timeline. You're giving yourself lots of space here. It's not going to be a rush job. You got a few years here to kind of dig into this sport and really learn about it. You're 6'8". Ayrton, you and I are like opposite types of humans. I'm 5'5". 6'8". This is amazing. You were a former basketball player. Well, I'll tell you what, I want to be on your team. Gosh, Ayrton, that's incredible. My guess is that you're going to have a few little challenges. One, maybe you already have a bike, but sizing a bike for someone 6'8" is probably challenging. If you need some support with that, let me know. I don't have a bike shop or anything, but I'm very well connected with lots of friends in the bike industry. So, I'm sure we'll get, maybe you're already sorted for that, but wow, that's so cool, dude. 6'8". I mean, I don't mean to go on about your size because I'm the opposite. I'm like half your size. I love it. Okay. Oh, you have a specialized 61 centimeter. Great. I'm glad you're connected with that. That's good. Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, it looks like maybe that's a wrap. We don't seem to have any more questions. This has been great. Thank you so much for joining us, Ayrton, Devin, James. Really appreciate everybody coming on here. Ayrton says I'm racing Nanaimo, or you race Nanaimo and Cultus. Yeah, awesome. Cool. Well, keep it up, Ayrton, and I hope to see you next week on the question and answer here. And thanks everybody for joining us today. 2 gold and 1 bronze. Ayrton, legend. That's awesome, buddy. That's so good. I love it. So good. Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you at the Victoria 70.3 in, well, probably about 6 months here. So thanks for joining us. Okay, everybody, I'm going to wrap it up there. And have an awesome Monday, or whatever day you're at. If you're down in Australia or New Zealand, I know we have some people from there. You're a day ahead of us, so happy Monday, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Take care, everybody. Happy training.